And, therapy is very much kind of working on what has happened to you so that you can reframe that for your future. Coaching is not therapy. We're not there to kind of figure out what happened in your childhood. Coaching is very much right, what is it that you want? What are your goals? And how can we get there? And as a coach, I'm holding my clients accountable and being their buddy, but without the BS that a buddy might give them. But also sitting there understanding, I've been through it. If you think every athlete has a coach to get them to peak performance, so why should we as normal human beings also not have a coach to get us to our peak performance?
And welcome to another episode of Carpe Diem Living the Podcast. I am your host, Shane Gitmed, and today we have Tracy Manser, who is originally from the UK and currently is not very far away from me, actually, just down in Los Angeles. So welcome to the show, Tracy.
Hi, Shane. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. I was just so excited to have you on and chat with you because you have such an impressive resume and I just have so many questions.
Ask away. Open book here.
Yes. So first of all, Tracy has the background of being an Emmy and BAFTA award nominated British TV producer, and she turned into a confidence coach and speaker over time. So where do you want to start? Do you want to talk about the very beginning, how you got into the industry?
Well, first I should obviously say that the Emmy and the BAFTAs came as part of a team. It wasn't just for me. So I have to kind of hold my hand up and say it was teamwork that got us those nominations.
Teamwork makes the dream work, guys.
Exactly.
Awesome. Yeah. So you basically were born and raised in the UK, right?
Yes. My accent gives that away, hopefully. Yeah, I was born just about an hour north of London. And I moved to London when I was 20 years old to start work. I didn't do the whole university college thing. I was more practical than I was academic. So it seemed like a good idea just to start work. And my very first job, I happened to be as a temp secretary, and it was in a TV production company. And as luck would have it, they ended up letting me stay there. And I was there for a year and watched what everybody did and decided that was probably a good, fun job for me.
That is so amazing, because that really is the definition of working your way up. You start in a company from the bottom and then you get to stay there long term. I love that you followed your gut with that, where you're just like, no, I'm not going to go into university. I'm just going to do exactly what I want to do. Just jump right in.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have gone to university. And I think that, there's a great support network that you meet at that age with sort of your peers that you're with. But I just knew it wasn't for me. And this job literally fell in my lap. I mean, I couldn't have been more fortunate with my whole career path, really. So, yeah, I just started working there, and I was only booked for a week and I ended up being there for a year. And I was able to see what everybody did. So I was able to see what the directors would do and how they would work, what the producers would do and how they would work. And then the area that I concentrated in, which is production management. So that's the organization side of things and finances. So I would deal with directors, producers, researchers, lighting, camera, set, all of the different departments. I would be sort of overseeing all of them and making sure they all had what they need and what they wanted to create the vision of the show.
That's a lot of responsibility and a lot of things you got to track. And, one of the things we're definitely going to chat about is how you overcame panic attacks.
Yeah.
How did your anxiety affect your role and vice versa with, in the production company side?
Well, to begin with, when I first started work at 2021, I didn't have any anxiety or issues at all. I was out 4 or 5 nights of the week. I was living this sort of fantasy showbiz life on the red carpet, going to events, always out with, a couple of tickets to something to go to every night. And, young, free, single, going out and enjoying the high life of London. It was fantastic. But a week before my 24th birthday, I had been set up on a blind date by a friend. met this guy in a pub. He seemed fine. Obviously, he was a friend of somebody that I knew, so I had no reason to distrust him. But he led me a story and a lie that resulted with me trusting him, which I shouldn't have done. And I followed him to his home, where he told me his housemate had been locked out. That was the reason we went there. And when I arrived at his property, I realized that that wasn't exactly the case. And his housemate was there. And they both kept me against my will for 2 days and raped me repeatedly, which led to me having catastrophic panic attacks, which happened for over 16 years. I couldn't find a way to shake them.
I am so sorry that you experienced something so traumatic, and it's so hard, especially when you're trying to meet people and a friend of a friend, and just something so horrific happens to you.
Friend of a friend. I mean, and listen, I'm not the only person that something like this has happened to, and I'm certainly not the poster child for what to do. I didn't react the way that I would advise someone else to now. I didn't tell anyone. I kept it quiet. I didn't report it to the police. And I'm not a spring chicken. So we're going back quite a few years when the onus was very much on the female to prove that she hadn't given consent in some way, shape or form. And I'd met him at a pub. We'd been drinking. I was dressed up in, nice clothes, short skirt, high heels. So I walked into his property willingly. So I, at the time, if I were to have my time over again, I probably would do things differently. But at the time, that was my way of coping, which resulted in, as I say, these catastrophic life-stealing panic attacks for years.
Oh my gosh. And, it's really hard, especially when, like you said, you guys had met up and you went somewhere, you willingly went to his place, but obviously it was under false pretenses. The whole thing was just...
premeditated, false pretenses. Right. I mean, listen, it happens to a lot of people, unfortunately. There's nothing I can do to go back and change that event. I don't have time travel yet, as much as we would all like it. But what I can do is change the way that I deal with it, change the way that I react to things that still may affect me. And it will always be part of who I am and what allows me my thought process going forward, but it doesn't have to be who I am. And that's a big kind of thing for a lot of people, is having this sort of label put against you of, oh, you're the person that was sexually assaulted, or you're the person who's got mental health problems because you have panic attacks. And I never wanted that. And particularly in television, it's a very close-knit community of colleagues and peers. Everybody knows everybody else. I mean, I now live in the States, and even when I moved over here, I knew people here that I'd worked with in the UK that had also made the move. So, it's a small community, and nobody wants that label. It's a horrible label to have, even if, like me, you're happy coming forward and talking about it. You still don't want to be kind of labeled with that kind of tagline. So, yeah, it affected me in a quite a catastrophic way.
Yeah. And, speaking about experiences like that are very healing. I know for a lot of people, when they do come to terms and they like to share their story with others, it comes from an empowering place, because they're like, yes, this had happened to me, but yes, it's not going to define me. And I was able to take that experience and help other people. So there's so many ways that you can go about that. So you're obviously a very strong woman and have a lot of wisdom to share, especially for other women. So that is, wow, such a powerful story.
It took me a long while. I mean, it took over 16 years before I really told anybody what had happened. And I just became, during those 16 years, my career still went on. I still had to go to work. I had a mortgage, so I had bills to pay.
Life doesn't stop.
Life doesn't stop, but you get very good at finding coping mechanisms for yourself. And for me, albeit I would be working with teams of, anything from 15 to 175 people, depending on the project, I found a way to never have to address more than 3 to 5 people at any one point. So rather than having a big team meeting where I had to speak in front of everyone, I would do department meetings. So I would only have to speak to the department, so the lighting department or the producing department. So that was a way for me to cope. And even now, and I've been kind of telling my story for a while, my colleagues are still coming forward from that time going, I had absolutely no idea that you were going through this internal struggle. Because you become a very good actress or actor. You find coping mechanisms, you find ways of dealing with your day-to-day. But that wasn't the life that I wanted for myself. And I still felt very restricted and very held back by this anxiety and this mental wellness that I wasn't achieving the way I felt I should.
Right. And you know, what's so crazy is I actually was just having a conversation with someone earlier, and very similar. Like when you go through different things in your life, you do find ways to cope, to get through your day to day. For me, I was a workaholic. So instead of thinking about what was actually going on inside, I would just do what I was good at, which is my job. And so
it's all I had for years.
I felt that when you mentioned that, I was like, because of that type of industry, I'm sure just being that busy just completely made it easy to just, nope, gonna just do my thing.
I was quite happy to do 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, 56 days without a day off. You know, I lived, breathed, and loved my work. I still love working in TV, but I knew that there was something else. And what I didn't have during that time was close friendships with people, because I had trust issues, understandably, but I didn't have relationships with guys, you know, romantic relationships. So I didn't have the bad breakups and, you know, the bad fights and the pints of ice cream with a girlfriend and tears. I didn't have any of that. All I had was getting up, somehow struggling to get out of the house. And most mornings that would involve being physically ill because, you know, that anxiety would start building, but going to work. And the thing was, because I was competent at my job, I became confident at it. Therefore, it looked like I was doing a good job. So nobody ever questioned why I wasn't joining them for a drink after work or going to the company Christmas party. They were just like, oh, well, that's just what Tracy does. That's fine. But she does a good job. So nobody ever kind of held me accountable to not having a life outside of work.
Yeah. So dealing with social settings definitely can be really hard when you're dealing with anxiety because, you know, the amount of people, the sounds, if there's a lot of music going on, crowded places, all of those things can very much be a trigger.
Oh, yeah. They still are to a certain extent. I mean, I'm much better now. But if I'm going to, for example, a party where I don't know anybody other than one person, I do get anxious about it. And I really shouldn't be, because you know, the worst thing that could have happened to me happened to me. It happened a long time ago. It's very unlikely to happen again. But there's still that, ooh, I'm walking into a strange place with strangers. Am I going to be okay? And that's a perfectly understandable kind of reaction for anybody to have. And I do try to reframe it for myself of walking in going, not will they like me, but will I like them? Or am I going to meet someone really interesting at this party that, you know, I want to sit and spend an hour talking to? Or am I just going to wander around with a drink in my hand and like nodding at people? Or will I be the person dancing on their own in the corner? All of those things are fine and they're perfectly acceptable, but it's a way of, again, it's just a way of coping and kind of reframing it in your own head to make it something that you can go out and do.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And like, even for me, sometimes when depending on where I'm going, I kind of have a game plan. I'm like, oh, okay, like who am I going to see there? How long am I going to stay? Like just certain things that I do to kind of like prepare myself because of my own anxiety that sometimes, you know, has its moments.
Always have an exit strategy.
Yeah, right. And it's funny because there was even a time where I was wearing my fitness watch and there were, you know, more and more people were pouring in and I'm thinking, okay, you know, this is getting, you know, there's a lot of people here. And I noticed my heart rate elevate, like it was tracking it. And I was like, ooh, that is a pure sign that like there's some anxiety building up here. And that's the time that I got to cut out early.
Absolutely. That, or, you know, doing something like my coping mechanism is I'd just go outside for 5 minutes, literally just for 5 minutes, just take a breath somewhere peaceful. And that just gets me back down and calm again. And then I'm able to go back in. But, again, that's a learned mechanism that I've had because I've had, well, almost 25 years of sort of trying to figure my way through this.
Yeah. So through all your experience and obviously finding ways to manage your anxiety, you eventually turned into a confidence coach and speaker. So how did your career evolve into that?
So this is relatively new. The pandemic kind of forced TV to close down. So that, understandable. And it's something I have been doing for a couple of years, sort of on the side with colleagues and sort of people that I'm introduced to, and I've been helping, but I've been doing it for free. But the pandemic gave me the time to sit down and actually get certified and to read all of those fantastic books that, give you all of these tools. And I just decided that actually it's probably a really good time for me to do this a little bit more professionally. I'm still in television. I still love doing that. But if I can do this on the side and help more people, and also by sharing my story, I help people. So I'm sort of heading in that direction. And strangely, it's not too dissimilar from TV. As I said, my job was very much to help everybody else to get the end result that they wanted. Coaching is exactly the same. You work with your clients or your groups or your workshops to help them get the life that they want to live. So although it's slightly different, there are a lot of similarities between it.
Isn't that funny? Like as you go through life and you gain different tools and knowledge, and then it evolves into something where you're like, oh, I didn't realize I'd be passionate about this, or I can apply the skills I learned from this career into this type of business model.
Absolutely. And I was really lucky. I had one of the best life coaches that I worked with. So the way that I kind of got out of this anxiety loop that I was in was a week before my 40th birthday. I went out for dinner with a girlfriend, and we used to have kind of a Chinese every couple of months to get together and talk about life, the universe, and, whatever else was going on in our lives. And she wasn't able to come to my birthday. I'd invited a couple of other girlfriends around for dinner, but she sort of said, look, what are you going to do? Why don't you do something you've never done before? Just do something big to celebrate. And it started a little kind of idea in my head, and I hopped on the bus to get home that night. By the time I'd got home, I'd written down 10 things I'd always wanted to do, but I'd never actually done because I'd lived in this world of fear and anxiety for so long. And I sort of left it like that, but it just was one of these little ideas that just wouldn't go away, and I couldn't forget about it. So I ended up actually writing a list of 40 things I'd never done, but always wanted to do. And it's not a bucket list because I wasn't dying. It was really kind of just things that most people wouldn't give a second thought to, like going to a yoga class I lived in Europe, so, heading over to France or Italy was really easy. I went to the Louvre in Paris for a day to look at all of the artwork. I learned to ski, I learned to surf, I went skinny dipping under the stars. I had a chef teach me how to chop properly with a knife without losing my finger. I even learned to do the flying trapeze, of all things, but just really fun things. And I ended up doing all of them, bar one, during my 40th year, which sounds crazy when I look back at it. But throughout that journey of doing these things, and some I did with girlfriends and some I did on my own and sort of pushed myself out of my comfort zone. But doing all of those things slowly gave me more confidence to be able to walk into a room and not literally turn around and walk out again with panic. And just reframed life for me. I was finally doing the things that I wanted to do. I was happy. My friends told me that I was glowing, which is always a lovely compliment to receive. And bit by bit, I was kind of chipping away at that anxiety. And at the end of that year, I was fortunate enough to be introduced to a life coach who ran a 1-week retreat, which was in Florida. And it cost an absolute fortune for me at the time. But I knew without any doubt at all that if I didn't go on that retreat, I would continue living in this anxiety cycle. And that wasn't the script that had been written for me with my name on it. The script that had been written for me, I hadn't actually opened the front page yet. So I went and I did the 1 week retreat. And on the very first day, I introduced myself to the 26 incredible women who were also attending. Had a panic attack just saying my name, so don't remember the next 4 hours. But I'm really happy to say that the tools that I learned during that week, that was the very last panic attack I had. And I'm nearly 10 years out since doing that. So that was the reason for finally getting rid of that anxiety and those panic attacks and those life-stealing moments. And it also introduced me to coaching. And I realized then that, I like this. This is maybe something that I could do once I'm well myself. And it's been a journey, and, you know, it wasn't an overnight success by any means or stretch of the imagination, but slowly, bit by bit, you know, you're able to work on yourself and do these things. And that I am perfectly okay with therapy. I am perfectly okay with people who need medications. That wasn't for me. And my choice was to deal with it with coaching and being more forward focused.
Wow. I love how, you know, you took yourself on this healing journey, finding things that lit your fire, finding things that really sparked that joy in your life.
Really? Yeah. I mean, I had so much fun.
Yeah.
I'd never been on a roller coaster. I did that. And we did the loop 6 times. So, I mean, you know, I was kind of go big or go home on it. But yeah, it was truly extraordinary. It's probably that and the investment in that retreat, probably the 2 best things I've ever done for myself in my life.
Right. And sometimes, you know, retreats and events like that, they can be very costly. But when, just like that way that you explained it, of how all those years you missed out, you know, like because of your anxiety, and you're like, you know what, that's it. I'm going to pay this amount of money. And in return, you got something priceless.
Absolutely. And valuable and valid for the rest of my life. Doesn't matter how many days I had after that event or that retreat, rather, every single day was going to be better than it had been pre that retreat. There was no doubt about that. So the longer I live, the more, you know, cost effective it became, really. It's like the French, whenever they buy an outfit, the beautiful, you know, French Parisian women, they buy an outfit that might cost thousands of euros, but they said, well, I'm going to wear it 100 times. So cost per wear comes down. And I looked at the retreat in exactly the same way, that to live every life without being physically sick, without panicking before I left my own home, that had to be worth any penny that I could scrape together.
Exactly. And, you know, that's a great way to explain it, because, yeah, depending on how many times you're going to use it, the money is well worth it. I mean, us women say that about our handbags, right? We're like, hey, that bag may be costing.
Exactly. I mean, I'm a shoe fanatic, so I've got some really nice shoes. And yeah, none of them have given me the joy that I got from that retreat.
Right. Yeah.
Well, maybe. Well, no.
I mean, if it goes really great with the outfit you're wearing for that day, then so.
Always.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is just amazing, because, you know, life coaching is definitely very life changing. A lot of people, when they hear that term, they're just kind of like, life coach, like, what does that mean? And honestly, I'm seeing a lot more people turn into the life coach career lately. Like people I've grown up with, and I'm like, oh, that's really nice that they felt called to do this work. And the way I see it is, if you find yourself at a fork of the road of like, okay, should I work with this life coach or not? More than likely you met that person for a reason. And because by working with them, it's going to make a huge impact on your life. Like, I've always believed in the different people you get connected to. There's always a lesson, or there's something you're going to get from that.
Absolutely. And, you know, therapy is very much kind of working on what has happened to you so that you can reframe that for your future. Coaching is not therapy. We're not there to kind of figure out what happened in your childhood. Coaching is very much right, what is it that you want? What are your goals? And how can we get there? And as a coach, I'm holding my clients accountable and being their buddy, but without the BS that a buddy might give them. but also sitting there understanding. I've been through it. So a lot of my clients do come to me for confidence issues, or just they're at, a bit of a crossroads and not knowing where their career is going. Obviously, a lot of the people I work with are in media, but I've been there. I understand it. So whilst I'm not their best friend, I am someone that they can absolutely rely on 100%, that I am in their corner, and that, if they have a bad day, they know they can pick up the phone and call me and I'll talk them off the ledge because I've been through it myself. So as with finding a therapist, you have to find the right one that fits for you. It's the same with coaching. And there are a lot of people that specify their niche. So there are, if you think every athlete has a coach to get them to peak performance. So why should we, as normal human beings, also not have a coach to get us to our peak performance? So that's really where the kind of difference comes. Some may be business coaches, some may be money coaches. I'm more towards the confidence, but general life as well. I think it's really important because you can't be prescriptive and only treat one thing or work towards one thing, because your entire life is wrapped up around that one thing.
Right. And, the best investment you can ever make is for yourself.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I've heard this from other people before, which I have to say that explanation you gave about athletes have their coaches, why shouldn't we have our own coaches? That is so true, because some people view life coaching as like, oh, that's a luxury thing, or only, I'm like, no, not necessarily, and
depends. For some people, yes, it is a luxury. For others, it's a necessity.
Right.
Personally, for me, it became a necessity. It was something that I absolutely knew that if I didn't take that road, I was going to keep traveling in the wrong direction for the life that I wanted. Now, for someone else, they may be absolutely fine. They can sit there and work out these things for themselves. They can hold themselves accountable. They don't need that assistance, but they might like it. So therefore, for them, it's a luxury. And everybody is allowed that opinion. It's what works for you. But I've seen some incredible transformations with some of the people that I've worked with. And some of the time they don't even realize that I'm coaching them. If they just think it's a conversation. But one of the kind of things that I live by is the word hope, HOPE, help one person every day. So I will coach people left, right, and center, the person at the Trader Joe's line, whatever. If I can help, I will. It's something that's always been inside me. I've always wanted to do it. Coaching just happens to be something that I can do that will also bring in a bit of an income.
I love that, because I can definitely say that I resonate with that. Even since I was a child, I always knew I wanted to help people. At first, it started off with me being a doctor, because at that time, it's like helping people equals being a doctor. And then as you grow up, for me, I became like mentors to people. Mm-hmm. It's not that I was looking for it. It's just people would come to me and say, hey, I really like what you're doing. I see the results you're getting. Can I get some advice? And so that's kind of how it turned for me as far as helping people in person and virtually. Yeah. I'm like, I'm happy to help in any way that I can, because I love making a positive impact.
Exactly. And there's nothing more rewarding than, as an individual, asking someone else for help. We always get caught up with that, they're going to hate me or whatever. I'm too scared to ask, or they're too busy. But when you ask for help and someone's able to give it, the reward that they get is tremendous, because most people do like helping other people. So when you don't ask for help, you're actually taking that ability and that reward away from the other person. I always use the analogy of a birthday cake. There's always someone in your office or your workplace that doesn't tell you when it's their birthday, which means none of us get to eat a slice of cake. So it's slightly selfish. So it's the same with, if you need help, ask for it. Don't be selfish to yourself. Ask for help, because people will come forward in leaps and bounds to try and help you.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, being a confidence coach is like perfect for the industry that you're a part of, because you do need to have quite a bit of confidence to be in the industry of, media and entertainment. Like, that's a lot of pressure, I can only imagine.
Yeah. I mean, the area that I worked in was unscripted, sort of entertainment, comedy, and reality shows. I did some documentaries as well. So those kind of areas, it's not like I'm working with actors and actresses who are constantly going to auditions and being told no. For them, they really do need a huge amount of confidence to keep being able to show up for those auditions. But within our area, it's still pressured. There's still, a lot of work expected from us. A lot of time is expected from us. And we in the TV industry, we all always want to do our best job. We want to make a show that whatever the content is going to be entertaining for a person. Whether that's a hard-hitting documentary, you still want someone to enjoy watching it. So we do. We bend over backwards. I know several people who've made themselves ill through burnout because they just keep going and going and going and going and going. And we can't do that. So whilst TV is one of the industries that, there are more eyes on, every industry has its pressures. Every person feels this sort of eyes looking at them from the outside. So it's not exclusive to my industry, but it is more prevalent.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, especially when it comes to showing up, I think that can be the hardest part is like when you don't have the confidence, how can you show up in a way where you're not giving off the frequency that you don't feel confident? Because you can tell when someone's a little bit not on their game or there's something holding them back. Even for myself, before starting the show, because I've been working with a business and life coach, and that was one of the biggest things that I had to overcome was being comfortable with being visible. And it's now fast forward to today, I'm like, that is so crazy that I even dealt with that. Cause now I'm like, I'm everywhere comfortably.
and a lot of people kind of have this misinformation and misnomer about confidence means that they have to be an extrovert. And you don't. You can be completely introverted, bookish, stay at home, do whatever, and still have confidence. So there's a difference there. But yeah, it's also a muscle. So as you say, you were working with someone and you look back and you kind of see your own history and your own journey that you've been on. That's the same for anyone else. The more you do something, the easier it becomes, the more competent you become at it, which in turn means you become more confident at it. So everybody can use that, whatever industry they're in, whatever they do, whether they're a stay-at-home mum or the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar business. The more you do something, the more you use that muscle, the better it and the stronger it becomes.
Yeah, everything being a muscle, the more you work at it, the more it just feels natural and free flowing. You just got to keep pushing forward, keep, moving past your limiting beliefs. I know that's really huge in this type of work. So if you were to give your top 3 tips to someone that does deal with anxiety, that has issues with going into social settings, coming from you, what are some wise words that you would give to that person?
Actually, I have 5, if that's all right.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah, I have something that I call the Daily 5, and I do a workshop on this actually. And I use the word daily as your tip so that you can remember it really easily. The first one is D, don't talk badly to or about yourself. You mistreat yourself like you are your own best friend because you wouldn't talk to your best friend in a bad way. So you shouldn't talk to yourself in a bad way. It's really catastrophic to do that. So if you find yourself saying, oh, I'm not clever enough, skinny enough, good enough, whatever, change it to today I haven't done X, tomorrow I will try again, or tomorrow I will ask someone for help, or just reframe it into a more positive way. I is for intent. I have this big thing about people will always kind of say, oh yeah, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do something else. And then they kind of do it half-heartedly and nothing really works when you do something half-heartedly. So if you want to do something, have an intention about it, write it down, make it a goal and put a date next to it. Because if you just have a to-do list, it'll be a to-do list for forever. If you put a date next to it or a must be done by date next to it, it becomes a goal, and then you can work backwards, break it down, figure out how you can get there, but be intentional about what you're doing. A is for alarms. I got those letters the wrong way around, didn't I? Can't spell. Anyway, A is for alarms. set an alarm to go to bed as well as getting up, and do not press snooze. Snooze is the worst thing you can do for yourself. Because you're telling yourself immediately that you don't want to get up and face your day. Just as soon as your eyes are awake, you're like, no, don't want to do that. Close the door, close the curtains, go back to bed. So that's bad for you. But there's also something which is a really good tool for a lot of people if they're kind of getting anxious or they've got a big project that they need to do. You can do something called the Pomodoro Technique, which is where you work in blocks of 25 minutes of focused attention on something and then a 5-minute break. And you can do up to 3 Pomodoros at the same time. So sort of almost 90 minutes, 85 minutes, and then take a 15-minute break. So I have alarms going off on my phone all the time. But another thing about alarms is make it something nice, peaceful and gentle. Don't have that me noise, because that instantly raises your cortisol levels, which increases your stress. So not a good idea. L for me is light. I am a firm believer that people must get outside for at least 5 minutes a day, whether it's sunny, rainy, snowy, doesn't matter. Get outside, get in natural daylight. It helps your circadian rhythm, which lowers your cortisol, which keeps you calmer. It's just really good for you. Obviously, if you're in a hot country, wear SPF, but get outside and live in the daylight. And my final one is Y, which is to say yes less, but also saying yes to the things that excite you. So if you're asked to do 15 projects for different people and you're feeling overwhelmed, say yes less. Pick the things that you are excited by, pick the things that you feel that you can do really well, and do those, because you will get more satisfaction out of it. You will feel that you've accomplished something. And really, all of that will help reduce your anxiety.
Wow, those are such amazing tips. And definitely I was taking notes in my head as you were saying them. And luckily we have transcriptions to all these episodes, so I will look back at them myself. But I know the Pomodoro one I've used off and on, but I definitely want to implement them more, especially as work gets busier and just, trying to juggle all the things. I think that's
absolutely. Pomodoro Technique is a game changer for a lot of people, because if you, for example, say you have a spare room. I know during the pandemic, everybody was going through their closets and cleaning. But when you have something that you need to go through, maybe it's the garage that you haven't kind of cleared out. If you do it in 25-minute blocks, it's not so overwhelming. It just becomes easier to do. And the 5-minute break is really important, because that changes your focus completely away from what you were doing. It means that your mind is fresh when you come back to something and you don't get that overwhelm. So it's really a game changer for a lot of people.
And yeah, you are pretty productive, more productive than when you started, because if you just work like an hour, 2 hours straight, eventually that's not going to be as you're not going to get as much done as you would have liked. And then, how did I use all that time to do nothing? Or I didn't even finish.
Yes. And we all have the habit of, we're on our laptops or our computers or our phones. We quickly flick over to see what's happened because a little alerts come up on a social media app. We're all guilty of it. But if you are able to go, right, well, for 25 minutes, I'm not going to look at those things, then it doesn't feel like it's such a long time of not being connected to your outside world.
And putting your devices on Do Not Disturb. That was a game changer for me, especially because there's some notifications I would get that were just completely not even relevant to what I needed at the time. I'm like, why did the app tell me to look at it? It totally grabs your attention at all the wrong times.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't use social media for 5 years because I just did not want to be bothered by it. It was a personal decision. And I kind of felt as well that my true friends, the people that I was interested in and they were interested in me, I would much rather spend an hour having a conversation with them once a month to catch up than just see this kind of 1 second photograph or 1 second from their life that, sometimes it can make you feel inferior. Because, when I was going through my panic attacks, 6-7 nights a week, I would be at home alone in front of the TV. There's nothing fun about that to put up on Facebook or Instagram. So we compare ourselves all the time to other people. And you have to remember that's their edited highlights reel. That's like when you go and see the movie and there's the adverts at the front for the new movies that are coming out. That's the edited highlights of that film. So Facebook, social media, they're all the edited highlights. So that's one of the reasons that I say don't talk badly to yourself or compare yourself with someone else. It's so easy to do. And that just makes us feel bad about ourselves. It's not good.
No, that's absolutely true. That's why for me personally, I'm excited to live in an area where there's more nature around me. So I'll be more plugged into my surroundings versus like always being on a device, right?
Yeah.
I've gotten better over the years, but definitely putting more emphasis on the being outside more, especially now.
Oh, me too. I, in England, was never a morning person. I hated the mornings. Here in California, I love them. I'm up at 6 o'clock every morning with my dog, and we go for an hour and a half walk, and he's little, but he loves it. And we go for an hour and a half walk, and I don't even take my phone with me. That, for me, is the one part of the day that I can guarantee there aren't going to be any pings, dings, phone calls, whatever. No one is pulling on my time other than him. And it's the most vital part of the day. And where I live, kind of on the outskirts of LA, we've got beautiful walks and beautiful countryside near us. So yeah, that's just the best bit of the day.
I love that. Yeah, we definitely got to take care of our pups too.
Absolutely. Well, they're the best things to happen to us.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I just love chatting with you and hearing about your story and being so inspired by you on everything that you've accomplished in your career and just in general. And now you're doing more coaching. So I just think that's the best way. And just creating an impact in our world. Like there's never enough people that could do that type of work.
Well, thank you. There are a lot of people out there that do it. They're unsung. We've got teachers, we've got nurses, we've got, first responders, especially this last year. They've all been doing an amazing job. And they are coaches in and of their own right. They just don't call themselves that. So, yeah. But I strongly believe anybody with a story should come forward, and if they feel able to, tell it, because even if one person hears it and is affected in a positive way, then it was absolutely worth sharing.
Absolutely. I agree with that 1,000%. And that's why I love this show, because we get to have all of our guests, have their voices heard. And I mean, we have people from all over the world hearing this. So we never know who this is creating a positive impact for.
Absolutely. Shane, you're providing us with a gift by doing this.
Oh my gosh. I'm so happy to do it. And it's one of those things that when you feel called, you just got to go for it.
Absolutely.
So follow them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So where can our listeners find you online? Now that you are on social media, share your website and your Instagram handle. I'm sure they would love to check it out.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. So my website is tracymanser.com, or I'm on all socials as Lady Tracy M.
Love that. Oh, and I will make sure that I am following you on all the things, because
yes, please.
I love staying connected with all the guests. So, oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show today. All of Tracy's links will be in the description box below, and we will catch you all next time. Thank you all again.
Thank you.